The black farmer was not just any man. He was someone who had worked tirelessly all his life to build something meaningful. From a young age, he had dreamed of owning his own farm and creating a life that was both stable and honorable. He grew up watching his parents toil in the fields, learning the value of hard work, patience, and integrity. Those lessons stayed with him as he grew older, shaping him into the determined, calm, and respectful man he was today. Despite the challenges he had faced, including the prejudice and judgments that often accompanied his skin color, he had never let bitterness take over. Instead, he focused on building his farm, expanding it little by little, and ensuring that his workers were treated fairly and with dignity. Now, he was a successful farmer and businessman, known in his community not only for the quality of his produce, but also for the way he conducted himself. People respected him for his honesty, generosity, and humility. Even though he had achieved financial stability and recognition, he remained the same down-to-earth person he had always been. He did not flaunt his success. He preferred to let his work speak for itself. Every morning, he would rise early, tending to his fields, overseeing operations, and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. In the evenings, he would often spend time with his family or meet friends in town, always carrying himself with quiet confidence. On this particular day, he decided to visit a restaurant in the heart of the town. It was a place he had passed many times before, a popular spot for locals to gather, eat, and chat. He had heard that the food was good and thought it would be a nice way to treat himself after a long week of hard work. Dressed neatly and simple, but clean clothes, he carried himself with the same calm dignity that people had come to associate with him. He walked into the restaurant without any expectation of special treatment, believing in fairness and equality, and assuming that everyone there would treat him like any other customer. The atmosphere in the restaurant was lively. The faint hum of conversations mixed with the clinking of cutlery, and the smell of freshly cooked meals filled the air. Families were seated at tables, groups of friends were laughing together, and a few individuals were quietly enjoying their meals alone. Despite the hustle and bustle, there was a sense of order, and the staff moved efficiently from table to table, taking orders and serving food. The farmer walked through the entrance, taking a moment to look around. He observed the people, noting the happy faces and the busy staff, and felt a quiet appreciation for the simple pleasure of a good meal in a welcoming place. As he approached the counter, he smiled politely at the staff, nodding in acknowledgement. There was nothing in his demeanor that suggested he was anything other than a regular customer. He had no need to announce his identity or display his wealth. He believed that character mattered more than status. Yet, there was an unspoken tension in the air that he could not ignore. In many places, he had encountered subtle looks, fleeting gestures, or casual words that revealed a bias he could not escape. He had learned to navigate such situations with patience, using calmness and kindness as his shield at that moment. However, he did not anticipate the experience he was about to have. He was there simply to enjoy a meal and perhaps share a small moment of leisure after the long hours he had devoted to his farm. He had entered the restaurant with a mind free of expectations, carrying only a polite smile and the hope of being treated as any other guest. Little did he know, this ordinary visit would soon turn into a situation that tested the patience, perception, and prejudices of those around him. The farmer's mere presence in the restaurant, unassuming and dignified, would soon spark a series of reactions that none of the staff could have predicted. Even as he took a step closer to the waiter, the farmer remained composed. His eyes scanned the menu briefly, and he thought about what he might order. He did not rush, nor did he demand attention. He simply waited politely, believing that good manners and respect were mutual. This calm, self-assured presence was something that often left a lasting impression on people, though not everyone could see past their assumptions. His posture, his slow and deliberate movements, And the quiet confidence he carried were subtle indicators of a person who had earned respect not through words, but through action. The farmer's introduction into this restaurant, seemingly ordinary to any other customer, carried with it the weight of his life's journey. Every step he had taken, every struggle he had endured, had led him to this moment. He was more than just a customer walking in for a meal. He was a man whose life had been defined by perseverance, dignity, and a steadfast refusal to let prejudice dictate his path. As he approached the waiter, none of the bustling crowd could have guessed the story that he carried with him, or the lesson that his presence would soon impart. The black farmer stepped further into the restaurant, his eyes quietly taking in the surroundings. Unlike his farm, where everything was wide open and predictable, the restaurant buzzed with a different kind of life, people chatting animatedly, children laughing, and the soft clatter of dishes creating a rhythm of everyday routine. He moved calmly, yet every step he took seemed to draw small, unnoticed glances from the staff and a few patrons. Some looked at him with polite curiosity, others with faint suspicion. He noticed it, of course, but he didn't let it disturb him. He had grown accustomed to such unspoken judgments over the years. As he walked past the tables, a faint smile crossed his lips. He liked to observe people, to watch the little details that revealed human nature. The way a mother tried to quiet her fidgeting child, the way a couple leaned toward each other in conversation, or the hurried movements of waiters carrying tray after tray. Each little action told a story. He found it fascinating how ordinary moments could carry so much emotion, yet most people failed to notice them. He wondered if the staff here had any idea of the story he carried with him, the struggles, the long hours in the sun, the nights spent worrying about crops and accounts. To them, he was probably just another customer, unremarkable at first glance. Reaching the counter, he paused briefly, straightening his jacket and brushing a speck of dust from his sleeve. His demeanor remained calm, unassuming, and respectful, qualities he held dear even when the world around him sometimes judged him harshly. He smiled politely at the waiter approaching him, offering a friendly nod, fully expecting a courteous greeting in return. But the moment hung in the air longer than usual. There was a flicker of hesitation, a tiny pause, as if the waiter were trying to make sense of something that didn't quite fit his expectations. The farmer's heart didn't race. He was used to these subtle moments of tension. He had learned that patience was often more powerful than confrontation. But he could feel the shift, the quiet judgment in the air. It wasn't loud or obvious, yet it was palpable, a reminder that even in a seemingly normal setting, people's assumptions could alter the way they treated others. Still, he didn't react with anger or frustration. He had long realized that the world often rushed to judge based on appearances and fighting. It head-on rarely changed hearts immediately. Sometimes, the best approach was quiet dignity, letting one's character speak louder than words. He took a small step closer to the counter, glancing at the menu. There was nothing extravagant about his choices. He wanted a simple meal, something to enjoy in the moment. He didn't need recognition, and he didn't expect any special treatment. Yet, as he made eye contact with the waiter, there was a brief flicker of something unspoken curiosity mixed with doubt, and perhaps a hint of disbelief. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it told him everything he needed to know about the waiter's mindset around him. Life in the restaurant continued as usual. A family laughed loudly at a nearby table. A man sneezed politely and was handed a napkin, and the smell of freshly cooked food lingered in the air. Yet, in the midst of this ordinary scene, a silent story was unfolding. The farmer's presence alone, so unassuming yet dignified, began to challenge the waiter's assumptions before a single word was even exchanged. Little did the waiter know that this encounter would soon become unforgettable, a lesson in humility that he would never forget. The farmer remained patient, standing quietly, radiating calm confidence. His eyes occasionally scanned the room, noting the small acts of kindness and inattentiveness alike. He knew that respect was earned, not by status or wealth, but through the way one treated others. Today, he was merely here to enjoy a meal, yet he carried with him a lifetime of experiences, resilience, and quiet strength. It was this combination: humble presence, silent confidence, an unwavering dignity that would soon turn a simple lunch into a story that left an entire room in shock. Asterisk. As the black farmer stood at the counter, the waiter finally looked directly at him. At first, there was a polite smile, but it quickly faded, replaced by something sharper: hesitation, uncertainty, and then outright dismissal. I can't serve you right now," the waiter said, his voice tight, eyes darting away from the farmer's calm gaze. The words hung in the air like a sudden, unwelcome chill. The farmer blinked once, then twice, as if hearing incorrectly. He had experienced prejudice before. Yes, but this caught him slightly off guard. Not because it was unexpected, it wasn't, but because it was so blatant, so careless, in a place where people came to enjoy a meal without judgment. He kept his expression neutral, not showing anger, though a storm of thoughts raced through his mind. He could feel the curious eyes of other patrons on him now, a few glances of discomfort, some hidden smiles, and a ripple of murmurs spreading across the room. "Excuse me?" the farmer asked calmly, his voice steady but firm, demanding recognition. Without demanding conflict, there was no hint of bitterness, only quiet authority, the kind that comes from a life of perseverance and self-respect. The waiter shuffled uncomfortably, adjusting his apron as if it could somehow shield him from the awkwardness he had just created. He glanced at the restaurant manager for reassurance, but no help came. The manager was busy with other customers. I just can't." The waiter stammered, searching for words, but none came that made sense. He had made a snap judgment based on the farmer's appearance, his skin, his quiet confidence, his humble clothes, and instantly assumed that he did not belong there. In that moment, the waiter's bias, so ingrained yet unspoken until now, had been exposed. Raw and embarrassing. The farmer, sensing the internal struggle, took a slow, deliberate step closer, his presence calm yet commanding. He wasn't aggressive, but his posture carried weight, an invisible authority that seemed to fill the space between them. "You are refusing me service?" he asked, not with anger, but with quiet incredulity. Like someone trying to understand a mistake that was too obvious to ignore. A hush fell over the nearby tables. Patrons stopped, mid-bite, conversations slowed, and a few leaned forward, curious. They had never witnessed such a blatant moment of disrespect happen in real time, and the farmer's composed reaction made it even more striking. The waiter's hands trembled slightly, and he dropped a napkin he had been holding. This simple clumsiness revealed the anxiety building inside him, a mix of guilt, fear, and shame all at once. The farmer did not raise his voice. He did not scold or insult. Instead, he stood there, silent but powerful in his dignity, forcing the waiter to confront the ridiculousness and rudeness of his own behavior. Every second stretched longer, heavier, as the waiter realized that this was no ordinary customer, and yet, at that moment, he had treated him as if he were invisible, unworthy, or beneath notice. It was a quiet battlefield of assumptions versus reality. The farmer's calm strength clashed silently with the waiter's impulsive prejudice. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. And in that tension, the waiter's mistake became more than just a personal error. Read was a lesson waiting to unfold. A moment that would leave everyone in the restaurant speechless. The farmer finally straightened his back, meeting the waiter's eyes directly. There was no threat in his gaze, only clarity. And in that clarity, the waiter suddenly realized that he had misjudged someone far beyond what appearances suggested. a realization that would soon turn the encounter on its head. The farmer stood there, calm as ever, his eyes steady on the waiter. He could feel the tension in the room rising, like a heavy cloud pressing down on everyone present. Patrons had stopped eating, whispers floated through the air, and even the soft hum of background music seemed to fade into silence. Yet, despite the stares, the murmurs, and the waiter's hesitation, the farmer did not flinch. He had been through moments like this before, times when people assumed, judged, or dismissed him based on his skin, his clothes, or his quiet nature. And he had learned long ago that anger rarely solved anything. Patience, dignity, and unwavering self-respect spoke far louder. He took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the air fill his lungs and let his presence do the talking. His expression was neutral, almost serene, yet it radiated a quiet power. There was a subtle, magnetic quality about him, one that made people uncomfortable when confronted with it in moments like these. Unspoken challenge. See me for who I am, not what you think I am. The waiter fidgeted under the intensity of his gaze. His voice caught somewhere between nervousness and guilt, unsure of what to do next. Instead of demanding an explanation, the farmer chose a different approach. He remained silent, letting the refusal linger in the air, like a question that needed answering. He could feel the waiter's eyes shifting nervously, darting to the floor, then back up again, as if trying to escape judgment. Every second stretched endlessly, the weight of the moment pressing down on both of them. He knew that people often revealed their true selves in moments like these, their prejudices, their insecurities, their unspoken fears. Then he was quietly observing it all around them. The restaurant seemed to slow down. Families paused mid-conversation, forks hovered over plates, and even the staff stopped in their tracks, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. The farmer's calmness was almost disarming, a stark contrast to the tension radiating from the waiter. He wasn't confrontational, but the waiter's own conscience seemed to amplify his embarrassment with every passing second. The farmer's internal response was simple: patience. He reminded himself that respect could not be demanded, only commanded, through consistent integrity. He did not raise his voice. He did not make a scene. Instead, he allowed the situation to speak for itself, trusting that truth would eventually shine through. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the dynamics began to shift. The waiter's nervousness grew more pronounced, his tray of dishes trembling slightly as he realized that this encounter was no ordinary one. The farmer's quiet strength was forcing him to confront not just a man, but the assumptions he had carried so carelessly. It was a delicate, silent battle, one of presence, patience, and perception. The farmer remained rooted in place, composed, dignified, and unshaken, while the waiter stumbled under the invisible weight of his own judgment. In that moment, the entire room felt it. The tension, the discomfort, and the unspoken lesson slowly taking shape. And, as the farmer waited, calm but firm, the stage was being set for the revelation that would leave everyone, especially the waiter, utterly stunned. The air in the restaurant felt heavier now, almost as if it were holding its breath. The farmer stood calmly, still radiating quiet authority, while the waiter fumbled nervously behind the counter. His hands shook slightly, knocking a napkin to the floor, and his eyes darted around the room, as if seeking an escape from the situation he had created. The longer he hesitated, the more the room seemed to grow aware that something extraordinary was unfolding. Patrons leaned forward, sensing that this wasn't just a routine refusal. It was about to become a lesson in humility that none of them would forget. And then it happened. A colleague of the waiter, passing by to deliver an order, casually mentioned the farmer's name, an innocent slip that hit the waiter like a lightning bolt. "Oh, that's Mr. Johnson. He owns the farm that supplies our vegetables." The words seemed to echo in the air, bouncing off the walls, as if time itself had slowed for the moment. The waiter froze mid-step, his tray suspended in the air, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His face drained of color, and his eyes widened in disbelief. The man he had just refused to serve, the man he had judged without thought, was not an ordinary customer. He was the proprietor, the very owner of the farm he had worked with, the man whose produce had likely passed through his hands countless times without recognition. For a moment, the waiter's mind went blank. His earlier assumptions, his momentary sense of superiority, his prejudice, they all collided violently with reality. He had misjudged a person he should have treated with respect from the start. The realization hit him so suddenly, so powerfully, that he could barely comprehend it. He stumbled backward slightly, the tray of dishes slipping from his fingers and crashing to the floor with a loud clatter that drew gasps from the surrounding patrons. The sound seemed to punctuate the lesson in the most dramatic way possible. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the scene, witnessing the transformation of a simple restaurant interaction into a shocking revelation. The farmer, still composed, did not raise his voice or react with anger. He simply observed, letting the moment unfold naturally, as if time itself had granted him the power of patience. His calm demeanor only intensified the contrast with the waiter's flustered state, making the scene even more striking. The waiter's embarrassment was palpable. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, and his voice caught in his throat as he attempted to form an apology. Any words that could possibly make up for the disrespect he had shown. It was a moment that carried the weight of all the unspoken lessons about humility, respect, and assumptions. The revelation was not just about identity. It was about the dangerous ease with which people judge others based on appearance. The farmer had endured countless moments like this throughout his life. But he remained steady, proving that dignity and patience always outshine ignorance and prejudice. The waiter, on the other hand, now faced the full force of his own mistake, visible to everyone in the room. For the patrons, the revelation was almost cinematic. Eyes widened, mouths opened slightly, and some whispered in disbelief. The ordinary man they had seen moments ago was, in fact, a man of great accomplishment and respect. The simple act of refusing service had now become a lesson etched in memory, a reminder that appearances are often deceiving, and that humility and respect matter more than snap judgments. And so, in this restaurant on that ordinary day, an extraordinary lesson was unfolding. The farmer remained calm, dignified, and silent, while the waiter grappled with the shocking truth. It was a revelation that would change not only the waiter's perspective, but leave a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it. In that instant, the balance of power had shifted quietly but decisively, proving once again that respect is earned through character, not assumed through appearances. The waiter's reaction was immediate and instinctive. As soon as the realization hit him that the man he had refused to serve was the very owner of the farm supplying the restaurant, his body betrayed his emotions before his mind could even catch up. His hands trembled violently, and the tray he had been holding slipped from his grasp. Plates and glasses clattered to the floor in a loud, jarring crash that seemed to echo through the entire room. For a brief moment, the noise drowned out everything else, the murmurs, the whispers, even the background music. It was as if the very walls themselves were emphasizing the magnitude of his mistake. The waiter's face turned pale, a mix of shock, embarrassment, and fear flickering across his features. His eyes, wide with disbelief, darted from the farmer to the broken dishes at his feet, then around the room as if expecting the patrons to scold him or erupt into anger. But the silence was almost heavier than scolding. The entire restaurant seemed frozen, all attention on the unfolding moment. The waiter realized that every subtle glance, every judgmental thought he had carried in his mind had led to this very public humiliation. Words failed him. He opened his mouth to speak, to apologize, but nothing coherent came out. His tongue felt heavy, and his usual confidence had vanished entirely, replaced by a raw, comfortable awareness of his own prejudice. He swallowed hard, trying to steady himself, but the weight of guilt pressed down so heavily that even standing upright felt like a challenge. He had underestimated a man he should have treated with respect from the very beginning, and now the consequences were unavoidable. The farmer, standing calmly amidst the tension, met the waiter's panicked gaze without anger or hostility. There was no need for shouting or confrontation. His quiet presence amplified the waiter's embarrassment tenfold. In that moment, the waiter realized the true meaning of respect, how it could not be demanded, only earned, and how easily it could be lost when judgment replaced understanding. Every fleeting assumption, every prejudiced thought had been laid bare in front of everyone in the room. Around them, the patrons watched in stunned silence. Some gasped, others whispered to each other, and a few even stifled laughter at the sheer irony of the situation. The waiter's fall from composed certainty to utter flustered panic was complete. He could feel the heat of humiliation rising in his chest, burning with each passing second as the reality of his mistake sank in. The clattering of the fallen tray seemed symbolical loud punctuation marking the moment his arrogance and bias had collided head-on with reality in the stillness that followed. The waiter's knees felt weak, and he instinctively lowered himself to pick up the broken pieces. Each plate he touched seemed heavier than the last, not just physically, but morally. He had learned, in an instant, a lesson that no training or instruction could have ever taught him, that assumptions are dangerous, and humility is powerful. The farmer had not shouted, not demanded anything, and yet the waiter felt the full force of accountability. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the waiter forced himself to meet the farmer's eyes again. This time, his expression was no longer just shockit, was remorse. The realization that he had judged a man of integrity and stature purely by appearance weighed on him like a stone. He understood, painfully, that his actions had been wrong, and that true respect was something he had failed to offer when it mattered most. The room remained quiet, the lesson settling over everyone, like a heavy, undeniable truth. The waiter's reaction, physical, emotional, and undeniable, was complete. He had fallen, both literally and metaphorically, into the consequences of his own prejudice. And in the calm, unshakable presence of the farmer, he finally understood what humility, dignity, and respect truly meant. The farmer didn't move immediately. He simply stood there, letting the waiter's panic and guilt unfold like a storm before responding. There was no anger in his eyes, no trace of bitterness, only calm and quiet authority. Every person in the restaurant could feel it the way. He carried himself, steady and unshaken, radiating the kind of dignity that could not be diminished by ignorance or prejudice. The fallen tray and broken plates at the waiter's feet symbolized more than a physical mistake. They were the visible weight of assumptions and disrespect meeting reality. "It's all right," the farmer finally said, his voice soft but firm, cutting through the tension like a gentle breeze in a hot room. It wasn't pity, nor was it sarcasm. It was a statement of principle. He extended neither mockery nor retribution, only the unmistakable presence of someone who understood the world's flaws but refused to let them dictate his actions. The words hung in the air, calm yet commanding, carrying more weight than any raised voice could. The waiter's shoulders slumped, relief and shame warring across his face. He mumbled an apology, almost inaudible, and the farmer nodded slightly, acknowledging it. But the nod was not a reward. It was a lesson in humility. Every word the farmer spoke, every small gesture, reminded the waiter that respect was earned through integrity, not assumed through appearances or position. The farmer had shown restraint, patience, and understanding, proving that true strength was measured in composure, not dominance. Around them, the restaurant seemed to breathe again. Conversations resumed, though quieter now, and eyes lingered on the farmer who had turned a moment of insult into a display of unwavering grace. Patrons whispered among themselves, clearly affected by the scene they had witnessed. They had all just seen an ordinary moment transformed into a profound lesson about human character, prejudice, and dignity. The farmer took a small step back, giving the waiter space, yet his presence remained commanding. "We are all human," he said calmly, "and we all make mistakes. What matters is how we correct them." The statement was simple, yet its impact was enormous. It was not just a response to the waiter's error, it was a life lesson that transcended the walls of the restaurant. The waiter lowered his gaze, shame mixed with newfound understanding. He realized that the farmer had done something remarkable. He had turned what could have been a confrontation into a teaching moment, leaving no room for hostility, only reflection. In that moment, the waiter understood that respect could not be demanded through fear or authority. It had to be recognized and reciprocated through humility and awareness. And then, quietly, almost imperceptibly, the farmer smiled. Not a triumphant smile, but one of quiet reassurance. The kind that says, "You have learned, now let this guide you forward." He didn't linger in anger, nor did he flaunt his power. Instead, he allowed his integrity to speak louder than any words ever could. The waiter's reaction had been a shock, but the farmer's response was transformative, a lesson not just for him, but for everyone who witnessed it. As the farmer finally moved toward a table to sit, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. The tension melted into reflection, a silent acknowledgement that this encounter had been more than just a simple refusal of service. It had been a mirror held up to human behavior, a reminder that humility, patience, and dignity always carry far more weight than arrogance or prejudice. And the waiter, still shaken, understood that he had not only been corrected, but enlightened by a man whose character demanded recognition, regardless of appearances. In that quiet, powerful way, the farmer turned a moment of insult into a story that would linger in the minds of everyone present for a long time, a story of strength without aggression, authority without arrogance, and lessons learned without bitterness.